Welcome all to Vortex Thoughts presents the Angry Grandpa Iceberg. This iceberg is one that was created by myself over the space of a week or so, thinking about how Angry Grandpa and his son Michael have been a staple of YouTube and have not had an iceberg video created yet. So I created the iceberg, put it together, and here's the video for you guys. If you see anything you think needs to be added to the iceberg, go ahead and leave it in the comments. Don't forget that this video is not meant to harass or insult anybody that is a part of the iceberg, part of Kid Behind the Camera, part of the Angry Grandpa lore. It's just made for fun to document and talk about all the things that have happened on Angry Grandpa's channel, Kid Behind the Camera's channel, for the last 10 years or so. So we're going to start with the tip of the iceberg. First one being pranks. As we all know, Kid Behind the Camera recorded Angry Grandpa on Christmas in 2007. The video was really meant for Kimberly, who happened to be in New York at the time, for her to, actually see the kind of blowout that Angry Grandpa would have, and to also prove to Angry Grandpa that yes, you actually get this upset and this irrational when you're angry. And Michael recorded it, put it on both YouTube and Break.com, and within 2 to 3 days, the video went viral on each site, and Michael and Grandpa made videos up until Grandpa died, and Michael still makes videos up to this day. Next is where Pickle Boy's name comes from, which is actually from a prank. So it was a prank that Michael was trying to dump some flour on Grandpa. He was hiding in the shower. Bridget told Grandpa. Grandpa said, well, let's turn it on him. Grabbed the jar of pickles, went up to Michael, said, here's some pickle juice, tell me what it feels like to be a hamburger, and started calling him Pickle Boy. And that's where the nickname started and where it stuck. The next thing is Pickle Boy and his questionable grooming. This comes from where Pickle Boy himself admits that he doesn't really change clothes that often. He'll shower, but he'll wear the same clothes. And a rumor that started within the fandom a couple years back was that Pickle Boy actually didn't shower and didn't brush his teeth, since he would always be wearing the same shirt, the same dirty shirt, on a consistent basis. And partly is the reason for why the whole Pickle Boy wears a diaper thing started with Bridget. Next on here is, why doesn't Pickle Boy drive? So the main reason Pickle Boy doesn't drive is due to a bunch of really bad car accidents that he has seen and was a part of. One of them led to AGP dying on the operating table and almost not being around for the invention of the channel, but he pulled through. And one of Michael's own personal friends got in a car accident that resulted in his death, and Michael after that really didn't want to be a part of the driving lifestyle. Another big thing about Angry Grandpa is his well-known farting repertoire. Basically, AGP could clear a room with one fart. It was a continuous joke when he was alive. Part of Mailbag Monday, he'd fart consistently. It was a thing. There exists a 30-minute compilation made by fans, and Michael has even created a compilation himself that he put up on Angry Grandpa's channel. If you guys want to go check them out, the links will be down below, as will be for any other video in this whole iceberg, unless I screen recorded it myself. Now, moving on to the next part. The whole Green family, especially Michael and Jenny and Jenny's kids, they're all really huge WWE fans. They tend to go to live shows a lot, like WrestleMania, house shows of SmackDown that happen in like the East Coast. And if you're ever at WrestleMania or even one of their live shows, look around. Maybe you might see Michael at Zoo Stuff Storyfire. Storyfire was a website created by Jesse Ridgway, aka McJuggernuggets, as an alternative to YouTube. What's interesting is that Michael actually put up Storyfire exclusive content up on Storyfire that has not been put on YouTube by Michael at any point in time, and still remains there up to this day if you ever want to check it out. Michael and Bridget, but mostly Michael, have been on a weight loss journey for about 8 or 9 years now. There is an actual video of Bridget and Michael from, I'm checking my notes here guys, from January 13th, 2014, which is, if you go to Bridget's channel, it's the day I met AGP. The video begins with Michael and Bridget on a weight loss journey. It's one of those things where Pickle Boy has been trying and kind of struggling with losing weight as he deals with food addiction and other issues that keep cropping up in his life, and it's something that he wishes to do and continues to try to do. Let's cheer him on a little bit. What comes inevitably with pranks and, fallouts of pranks is the amount of destruction that AGP could do. There was the thousands of dollars after AGP destroyed the pool that Michael bought for him, and the water coming out of the pool then went up the van that AGP was driving in. That's why he had a truck for a hot minute, and then he got a sedan. There's the thousands of dollars worth of destroyed kitchen stuff, like a refrigerator, stove, 2 stoves, etc., a washer, which they were still renting from Rent-A-Center, and even, destroying a couple of things at a tattoo shop when they got their $1 million tattoos, which is the one where my ass stinks came out from. One of the lesser known, or not lesser known, one of the lesser like things about Kid Behind the Camera, but very well known thing, is how much he clickbaits through use of thumbnails and titles to increase views, and it's turned a lot of his fans against him. Recently, the clickbaiting has gone down. It's still present, but it's one of those where if people are still watching, they know that he is going to clickbait, and they, live with it. It's just one of those accepted norms of the Kid Behind the Camera channel at this point. So, to add on to the pranks, what is well known now, but wasn't a couple years ago, was that to an extent, some of the pranks that Kid Behind the Camera and Angry Grandpa were doing were staged. Like the tattoo one, the tattoo was real, everything was real, but they had apparently behind the scenes worked out what AGP could destroy and could be replaced, and what he couldn't destroy. And that's just one example of how some of the pranks were staged. It goes without saying that you can't really keep making pranks and have the person keep having the same reaction. It's just unsustainable. If your YouTube channel, if your family knows that your YouTube channel is a well-known prank channel, then you're kind of going to expect a prank. And it's nothing bad to have a staged prank, for example. Like, it's just one of those accepted norms. It's what a lot of other prank channels used to do. But to add on to that, what ended up happening, because some of their pranks were staged and the Kid Behind the Camera crew and your Grandpa crew never really kind of explicitly said it, there was a fan. And this fan befriended them because he lived in the same, he lived in Creekside, I believe. Dylan was his name, since he wanted attention, we'll give it to him now. Dylan actually decided to blackmail Angry Grandpa and tell him, well, we know your channel's fake, we know your pranks are fake, and I can help you if you let me be in your videos and shout me out. I won't tell the world that, hey, that your pranks are fake. Michael eventually had enough, talked to Grandpa about it, and they both went at Keemstar, host of Drama Alert, and came clean and said, hey, our pranks are fake. Some of them are fake to an extent. And for the most part, the blackmailing, Dylan, they went away of their own accord. Another thing to add to this is how Michael, Grandpa, and Bridget have had continuous drama with some family and friends who were out to use them because of their fame. Some of this had to do with who, through which will be explained later on in the Iceberg, had a falling out with his daughter. Charlie, who will also be added on to later on in the video, had a falling out with them and tried to out them on social media. And Tina, who one day just decided, hey, I don't F this, and decided to go and out Angry Grandpa and, accuse him of all these things. They essentially all banded together to an extent, mostly Doug and Charlie. And some of their videos that they did together are on the internet if you guys want to go see some delusional people. On the brighter side, in the end, in the last entry here in the tip of the iceberg, is Kid Behind the Camera's awesome friendship with people like Boogie2998 and McJuggernuggets, to name a few. On to the middle of the iceberg. It's kind of a quick mention is that Pickle Boy created a lot of side channels. It's kind of a known fact to some of the fans that have been present in Michael's fandom for about 10 years or so, that Michael's created a lot of channels, and a lot of those channels are either deleted or removed by Michael or by YouTube themselves. And it's just one of those things where a bunch of channels were created, a bunch of channels were deleted, and that's about all they know.
What's going on, you guys? Kid Behind the Camera here.
Bridget was
Something quick to talk about Bridget. There was this really old, in the older vlogs when Michael and Bridget first started their daily vlogs before they ended it, there were the no Bridget intros. It was a big thing that Michael would try to make either an intro or an outro without Bridget, and he would call it successful if he was able to do it without Bridget, but somehow, some way, Bridget was always able to follow his plans and end up in the intro. I specifically remember watching these videos and looking around the corners to see if Bridget would show up and being very upset when she actually did show up. It was just one of those haha, this is kind of funny. And for whatever reason, the fandom, the fans really ate that up back in the day. And it's one of those things where now the fans really love Bridget, which is awesome. And to see that growth of love that the fandom has created for Bridget is awesome to see. So, next in the middle of the iceberg is Michael hitting and scaring his nephews. Some of the older videos show Michael throwing his nephews around or letting them watch/play scary video games, and even AGP used to throw things at them. I won't go into too much detail. This is something that a lot of other people have talked about a lot, and it's one of those where if you want to get more information on that, go find these other channels. Now moving on to the next one. Something that I almost talked a lot about is Pickle Boy's attempt at having a rap career. Pickle Boy said that at the time he really wanted to make rap because he was very deeply influenced by Eminem. He felt that him and Eminem had a lot of things in common. They both came from trailer parks. They both had shitty families, and he felt like both of them could, elevate and talk about these issues that not a lot of other people are aware of because they don't come from this kind of environment. Although Michael never really garnered any mainstream success or popularity, it's cool to see that he was able to do something and, do something he really enjoyed. And if you ever want to take a listen to some of his music, go ahead and find it. And what's been playing here in the background is the song that Michael wrote for his dad after his dad unfortunately lost his battle with cirrhosis of the liver. This one's another little quick tidbit, but apparently there's a joke going on right now that Michael and Bridget are so broke that they're going to have to make an OnlyFans Bridget. There's a lot of wonderings as to why they keep joking about this. And I think it's just one of those things where it's OnlyFans is kind of something a lot of other people talk about. And in terms of, unfortunately, clickbaiting, it's one of those things that Michael and Bridget can take advantage of, because I'm sure there's people out there who would be interested in getting their own picture of Bridget's OnlyFans account. If you've been watching Kid Behind the Camera for as long as I have, you probably already know about Michael's toy wrestler obsession. It's something that AGP for a very long time had an issue with. It's something that, although Bridget didn't really mind it, she'd tease him about it. It'd be something that he'd get teased a lot about on the blogs. It's exactly what it sounds like. Michael just had a lot of WWE wrestlers, and he would play with them and have them do fights and everything, and it was just stemmed out of him not being able to do so as a child, as, you know, him and his whole family grew up really poor, and it's just something that he wanted to do for himself. Something that Michael has actually been talking a lot about recently is how his family ended up on TV quite a bit. So, there was the whole Green family has ended up on Discovery in the United Kingdom, on Rage TV here in America, and they were even offered a TV series, kind of like Honey Boo Boo's family was, or other families on the Learning Channel. But to have done so, they would have had to quit YouTube and deleted their whole channel, and that was something Michael was unwilling to do. And all the power to Michael for making that very tough decision. I myself don't know what I would have picked if that was something that was offered to me. Next up is, how did Michael and Bridget meet? If you go far back enough to the beginning of Kid Behind the Camera's channel, which was made a couple months after Angry Grandpa's channel was made, Michael actually tells you the story of how him and Bridget met. They met through MySpace. And Bridget talks about how she liked his picture. And, you know, they talked. They asked each other's age. Bridget told Michael she was 19. Michael told her, hey, I'm 21. And the funny thing about that is that technically Bridget lied to Michael. Michael didn't actually find out that Bridget was underage until her, I believe, her 17th birthday, which I might be wrong, don't quote me on that. And they've been dating ever since. One of the funner things of the Angry Grandpa channel is a trailer park cooking. AGP has a whole series of recipes that are made to be good and cheap, so you can feed the whole family without breaking the bank. And I've actually cooked some of them, and they're pretty delicious. If you guys ever want to see what Angry Grandpa food tasted like, you have a bunch of recipes right there. They're called Trailer Park Cooking. So next on are the family arrests that this family has dealt with. Quite a few people in this family have been arrested, including Angry Grandpa himself, Michael himself, Jenny back in 2008-ish, Charlie through the whole LSD, not only LSD destroying the whole pool house, but through failed child support payments, which will be talked about eventually at some point later on in the bottom half of this iceberg. And Bridget. All of these were due to either misunderstandings, fights between the family, or overall disagreements that were elevated due to, anger and stuff. So, something that not a lot of people knew or maybe did know is that AGP was actually divorced. But he wasn't divorced just once to Tina, Michael's mom. He was divorced twice. He was married to another woman before he met Tina. Her name isn't really known, or if it is known, it's something I haven't personally looked into. That woman, deserves to live her life however she so pleases and doesn't need to be harassed by us. So please don't try to figure out who she is. It's alleged that Tina, not the first wife, but Tina, the second wife, was kind of abusive and spent a lot of her money on all this stuff and drugs. I don't know how true that is. I don't want to speculate on that aspect. It's just one of those things that Michael and Grandpa have talked about, on podcasts and talked to people about some of the horrible things Tina has done. And it's one of those where if you want to go down that rabbit hole, I highly suggest you do, because it's one of those where If you want to get some information, get it firsthand from Michael and Grandpa himself. So, adding on to the divorce thing is Lauren. So, who is Lauren? Where did Lauren come from? Lauren was actually a fan who met AGP through the Twitch mods. Lauren was a fan, she became a mod, and then she and Grandpa actually started talking outside of like Twitch, talking to each other, and they realized they had a lot in common. There's a whole video Lauren put up there on her own YouTube channel about how she met him and everything, and how they got together. I think it's definitely worth watching if you guys want to know a little bit of how those two met. It's a really sweet story, and I highly recommend watching Lauren's own video about it. Now, moving on to the bottom of the iceberg. This is the stuff that's less well known about AGP, and one of those things where you have to have been either part of the AGP fandom for a long time, or just something that you've seen recently through some expose video. Now, moving on. AGP is racist. So, in a lot of the older videos, Angry Grandpa used to say a lot of kind of racist things about Mexicans, people of color, about Obama, and how he was border patrol. I don't know, nor can we actually really say if he was truly racist or not. Angry Grandpa, as we all know, has passed, and he's not here to defend himself. What we do know is that over the course of time, and I do really think that having had all the youngins, forced him to really sit here and think about, what he said and done, as when he tried to pay a couple bills sometimes, if they wouldn't let him pay the bills, or he wasn't able to due to things that were outside of his and even the person on the phone's control, he would claim that they voted for Obama and that's why they didn't let him, pay the bills. Now, Charlie, the abuser, and this is not to be mistaken with Angry Grandpa, but Charlie the son, Michael's oldest brother, or only brother. So, as mentioned earlier in the iceberg, Charlie kind of has a really terrible history. And this history is that he was a very abusive person. He gave his nephews drugs and alcohol and forced them to drink it. It's kind of alleged that he hit Grandpa, and Grandpa was really scared of him, wouldn't come out of his room because he was terrified of Charlie. And it's part of the reason why Charlie actually ended up moving out of Grandpa's house in the first place. Later, after the whole Pool House drama came out with Charlie and he hit Bridget, Jenny and Kimberly both alleged that when they were younger, Charlie and one of his friends in the neighborhood tried to sexually assault both Jennifer and Kimberly when they were younger. And it's something that the family didn't know about because it's something that neither of the two actually really talked about. And it's one of those things where even now, myself talking about it makes me really upset for those two. And I'm glad that that both Jennifer and Kimberly were able to move on and, become bigger, better people from something as terrible as that. To add on to that is Jenny's sobriety. If some of you have been watching a lot of the older videos, Jenny used to be there, but not really talk and stuff. And in one of the videos, which I haven't been able to find, you actually hear Michael and Bridget talking to Jenny, and they talk about how far Jenny has gotten over the past decade or so, and how she's been able to get clean and stay clean, and genuinely care and love her children, which is something that I think we can all be very proud of, and congratulate Jennifer for being able to remain clean and stay clean. Being clean and being sober isn't easy, and we're glad, I myself at least, am very glad, very proud of Jennifer for being able to stay as clean as she has been able to. Go, Jenny. So, childhood trauma. So as Michael, Jennifer, Kimberly, and even Charlie have talked about, the family grew up poor. You know, they talked about how they were trailer trash and they thought they were going to be trailer trash until the day they died. And then Michael recorded that one Christmas video. It's known that since they were growing up so poor, they didn't really have a lot of things to go without eating, and they do tell a lot of what they consider funny stories, like the missing cheese or the vent story, which is something that they really like to tell and talk about. It's like the way they remember their dad, you know, when they were younger. Aside from that, they also talk a lot about how AGP, specifically the older kids, by the time that like Michael was born, a lot of that anger had gone away from angry grandpa. It was still there, but it was to a much lesser degree. About how Jenny and Charlie used to get hit a lot by AGP and like through them. There's a vet story in which Jennifer actually gets picked up by Grandpa and thrown against the wall, and it's like this funny haha story, and something that if you guys ever want to look into, I highly recommend it. So one of the funnier ones, I think it's one of the funnier ones, is that Angry Grandpa used to sell a lot of things at a flea market. Like they'd end up getting a little booth space and they'd sell things to make ends meet. Some of the things that they used to sell were not safe for work materials. That I don't know if I can say that word. And the rumor that started going around the town is that he would make said materials with his kids. It was never proven, but because of the rumors, Grandpa actually ended up not selling that kind of material again. And please excuse any barking you hear in the background. That's my neighbors. Sorry about that, y'all. So I will, later on in the video, talk about Angry Grandpa's flea market. I believe it'll be in the next section. AGP used to have a restaurant. And in that restaurant, he used to serve a lot of bikers, like from the biker gang. The gang isn't really talked about which one it is, but essentially Grandpa would cook them food. They really liked it, and they grew to really adore and appreciate Grandpa. And so Grandpa was was an honorary member of a biker gang. Now, something that not a lot of people might know these days is why Grandpa ended up at Creekside. Creekside was a trailer park community home that Angry Grandpa moved into after Boeing bought the land at Trailwood. Trailwood is the original trailer park where Grandpa used to record the videos. And the trailer home that Angry Grandpa used to live in was something that was a trailer park home that had been with the family, you know, over decades. Over at least 30 decades. It's the one that Grandpa himself grew up in. It was something that his grandparents gave to his parents, and then his parents, you know, gave to Angry Grandpa Charlie. And the reason why he ended up moving in into Creekside in a different trailer home was because Boeing bought the land that Trailwood was on, and Angry Grandpa tried his darn best to make sure that Trailwood wouldn't be sold, but in the end, no matter how many officials they called, no matter how many local government meetings they went to, or how many neighbors they tried to get into the whole movement, Boeing was sold. Boeing bought the land, and everybody in that community was forced to leave the site. So, earlier I mentioned the No Bridget intros. And the reason I brought it up is because now there happens to be a Bridget West Reddit thread. The actual thread, I tried to get a screenshot of it today in August 17th of 2022. And it's not there, but I see a lot of the posts that were made by different accounts. But the Reddit thread was really a group of like 10 to 15 men who all really liked Bridget. I'll leave it at that. And they would take screenshots of Bridget's body in specific positions, and they would put those on the Reddit thread and, you know, talk about how beautiful she was. Would write fan fiction of a very explicit nature. And overall would simp over Bridget. It's something that, although Michael and Bridget never really talked about in the vlogs, it's kind of implied, and a theory as to, and it's an explanation as to why they probably have been bringing up OnlyFans, since whether they want to admit it or not, these dudes talking about Bridget creates interactions in their videos. So, as mentioned earlier in the Iceberg, Michael has had YouTube friends. He's had friends like Boogie and Jesse. A friend that he doesn't really like to talk about anymore, understandably so, is Daddy 05. So back before the whole Daddy 05 drama started, Michael and Daddy 05 were really good friends. They would hang out. There's actual vlogs of them still up on Kid Behind the Camera's channel to this day, of where Daddy 05 was at Kid Behind the Camera's house. And it's something where Michael, before they actually had the final proof of exactly how horrible Daddy 05 treated Cody and Emma, he defended him and said, hey, we don't know the truth, don't just listen to rumors. And it's something that once everything came up, he just never really talked about him again. This one's not so serious because I actually don't think it's too true. But there's a vlog called We Had to Call 911, and it's kind of a clickbaity thumbnail and title. But essentially it goes that they accidentally left the kids in the car, locked in the car. That's Mia and Mikey, because Bridget had to step out to take a phone call. The theory is that they actually went into the store, Bridget was the one recording, and they just left the little kids in the car, and then realized that the car was locked, and so they called 911 so they could say, oh no, like it got locked. But I really don't think that's true. I think Bridget probably stepped out to either smoke a cigarette, which is, you know, her own thing, or take a phone call. We never know. I mean, I wasn't there. On 3 separate occasions has forced Michael to move. This was because Boeing bought land that his house was on or near to make either a runway or a parking lot. This happened with Trailwood. This happened with Michael's first apartment area, his house before he bought the house that he lives in now as well. In addition, I'm sure it goes without saying that there's a lot of pranks and videos that have been deleted through the Angry Grandpa channel. And if you look through YouTube, you can actually find a list of them. And if you so choose to, the Angry Grandpa Wiki fandom page actually has a list and hyperlinks to all the deleted content if it's available anywhere on the internet. One of the most egregious deleted videos that not a lot of people know about is the video in which Michael pranks his family by peeing, spitting, and putting snot into a soup, and then having his whole family, his mom, his dad, Jenny, and Jenny's boyfriend at the time, actually eat the soup and try to figure out what's wrong with the soup without knowing that he actually urinated, spit, and put his own snot into the video. It's pretty gross. I put it up here so you guys can see it. Check out the original video. It's one of those videos that, you know, critiques Pickle Boy, and if you want to see more about that, go ahead, check it out. So something that's kind of funny to goes to show who Charlie, aka Michael's older brother, what he's like is, so he got kicked out of the house, right? He was kicked out, you know, he had to deal with all that. He went to go crash with his Charlie went to go crash with his half sister, who was his Angry Grandpa's daughter from his first marriage. That's all we know about her. But the idea is that after she kicked him out, he went to a friend's house, and his friend, you know, generously opened up his home to Charlie, and then Charlie paid him back by sleeping with his friend's wife. That's all we really know about that situation. So, Angry Grandpa's no stranger to there being a bunch of ghosts in his house. One of the first ghost videos that exists on the Angry Grandpa channel is the ghost in the trash can. And it's like this vlog on Grandpa's corner where, you know, Grandpa's looking over a fire truck, And they don't notice it at the time, but they see a little head pop out of a trash can and then go away after a little while. And it's one of those where they've stated that it's not one of the boys. It couldn't have been one of the boys. And I guess we'll never know. This next video is also from Grandpa's Corner. It's about the man in the blue suit. And so basically, the story goes that Grandpa's grandpa died. So, Michael's great-grandfather passed away. And at the time, they wouldn't go to a funeral home or church. They would present the person at, the loved one's home. Whether that be, Grandpa's house, Mom's house, yada yada. At the time, it was actually the Trailwood trailer that they presented Grandpa in. And so a lot of people were coming in and out of the trailer. And Grandpa remembers seeing this one guy who walked in a beautiful blue suit with a dark blue tie with gold stripes. And the man asks Charlie, "Hey Charlie, can you go get this hat for me? It's under the house." And so he goes, grabs a hat for the guy because he felt bad for him being all dressed up and losing his hat. So when he gives him back the hat, the man gives him a silver dollar and then disappears. And Grandpa didn't think much of it. He just, he was a kid. He was 8 or 9 when this happened. He was flipping the silver dollar, walked back into the house, and his dad, Michael's grandpa, this is going to get a little confusing. So Charlie II, Angry Grandpa's dad, asked him, "Where'd you get that silver dollar?" He said, "Oh, the man in the blue suit." And his grandma, very perplexed by this, goes and grabs a photo album and flips through it and asks Grandpa, "Hey, who did you see?" And Grandpa points out to this one man, and it turns out that the man that Grandpa saw that gave him that silver dollar was his own grandfather's friend at the time, who came to, say goodbye before moving on to wherever he goes to go. And the final story for, the middle of the iceberg is the Somerville Light story. And so this was a story Angry Grandpa told on Grandpa's Corner about the time that he went to go see the Somerville Light. It's a legend that happens in Somerville, South Carolina, at these railroad tracks that apparently do not exist anymore. This happened in the 60s, and Grandpa with 2 friends and a dog who belonged to one of the friends went in a truck to go check out. They see this light, and what that light is supposed to represent is essentially the light of this train conductor's wife. She would go up with a lantern to go meet him and walk him back to their home. And one night, the train conductor fell off the train. His head got run over. And when the wife came up to find him, only found his body, no head. And so as a result, she's been wandering up and down that railroad track trying to find his head to, put him to rest. And that light that they kept seeing is supposed to be the wife. And Grandpa talks about how he was looking at that light and he thought, "Hey man, that's just a little light. Like, that ain't much." And then the light apparently went over them. It somehow managed to turn off the light and really freaked them out, and it's something that to this day he can't really explain. If you want a better retold story of that, go watch Grandpa's original video. He does a much better job at explaining this, and it's actually a really funny story. Sort of. So, now moving on to the deep sea. The first thing to mention on the deep sea, and one of the things that led to the big fallout of Doug, Bridget's father, is that when Angry Grandpa passed away, Doug, for some reason, really thought that he was going to be the new Angry Grandpa. And he was convinced that he would be the new Angry Grandpa. He quit his job. He did everything he could in order to facilitate that. And then when it didn't happen, he got really upset and started, that's when he started his YouTube channel and started talking smack about Michael and Bridget. And that's where that whole drama really stems from. It's not really discussed often or at all because, as Michael doesn't want to give him more attention than he deserves, which I do not blame him, but that's apparently the reason why Doug is so upset with his daughter. Adding on to that, the first channel from Kid Behind the Camera, aka the first Angry Grandpa channel, was actually deleted due to violations of terms and services. I myself was personally subscribed to this channel, and I remember seeing it deleted. It's not really known as to why it got deleted, but some of the stuff that will be mentioned on later in this iceberg may be the reason as to why that channel got deleted. So some of the videos that existed on the channel before it got deleted are the AGP toenail videos, and they're not as weird as it sounds. Essentially, AGP used to get these horrendous ingrown toenails, and he would do surgery himself and rip them out of his body. I won't go into too many details. If you guys want to see what I'm talking about, Michael himself has talked about it semi-recently, and talks about how those videos are what prompted Discovery in the UK to reach out to Angry Grandpa and put him on their TV show to talk about how some of the crazy things Americans have to do because the American healthcare system sucks so much here. In addition to the toenail videos, AGP also had a couple of smacks videos, and they're not like Kim Kardashian style videos. No disrespect to Miss Kardashian, please. I ain't hating. But essentially, Michael walked into AGP and Tina going at it. He recorded it and then uploaded it to YouTube and Break.com. And it's one of those things where if you saw it, you saw it. If you didn't, you didn't. That's all I'm going to say on it. Now, to add on to earlier, when I was talking about Charlie sleeping with his friend's wife, something that's not really well known is that Angry Grandpa has been married before. Once before. He was married before he married Tina, and he actually had a daughter with that wife, and her name is Dawn Michelle, and she's Angry Grandpa's other daughter, so technically she's older than Charlie. Michael, Kimberly, Jenny, and Bridget never really talk about her. I don't think they really know her that well, and let's respect her privacy. If Miss Dawn Michelle would like to talk about her life, then that's all her. Let's please be respectful of that. Now, going back to Grandpa's Corner, one of my favorite stories from Grandpa's Corner is the one where he talks about being a hippie. So he talks about how he used to be a hardcore hippie and he went to the original Woodstock with Jimi Hendrix, and how they went on a bus, and it's a whole story that you guys need to watch Grandpa tell. But essentially, they got on a bus, they needed tires, they needed gas, they met some honeys, and eventually got to Woodstock, walked over fences, and enjoyed Woodstock. Another funny story on the Grandpa's Corner channel is Angry Grandpa gets beat up by a gay guy. A lot of people were asking him, how come you don't like bullying, Grandpa? Why are you so against bullying? And so Grandpa tells the story of how he used to be a bully. Specifically, he used to bully gay people. And he tells the story of the late 60s. How him and his friends all got up in a truck. They were drinking and drugging. And they seen this dude. They later realized that the guy is gay. And so they drive up to the guy, and they ask him to come in. The guy says yeah. They drive him out in the middle of the woods, where there'd be nobody. They pull out a monkey wrench. They try to rob the guy and hit him with it. Then the gay guy gets up and says, there are two things y'all boys need to know. I like to suck dick and fight, and beats the living tar out of Grandpa and his friends. I am not doing the story justice. Please go watch Angry Grandpa's original video. It's called Angry Grandpa Beat Up by a Gay Guy. It is one of the funniest stories Grandpa has told because he himself admits that, hey, I messed up. I thought I could beat him up because he was gay. I was wrong. It's one of those original Grandpa stories. So, a lot of people have been wondering, and have wondered, hey, why do you, Michael, and Grandpa like Paul Heyman so much? Well, what's not known, and it's kind of been talked about a little bit recently, is that Michael actually used to work for Paul Heyman. That was his first original job. Even to the point where when Trailwood was closing down and they needed some money to move Grandpa into a new home, Paul Heyman sent it with no questions asked. The money was right there. And they have a lot of respect for Paul Heyman. That's why they love Paul Heyman so much in the Green family. And I can't say I disagree with them. So something that's interesting when it comes to Creekside is the addition of Tina, the neighbor. When AGP died, Tina and Michael specifically kind of had a bit of a falling out. The rumor behind that falling out was actually that Tina was selling drugs to Angry Grandpa, and that Michael tried to get Tina to stop, and since Tina wouldn't stop, it's one of the reasons why he didn't really talk to her anymore. We don't know if it's true or not. I don't think it is, and it's just one of those things that is brought up in the fandom sometimes by people who've been watching for quite a while, and it's one of those where if you didn't know, you didn't know, and if you knew, you knew. Now, another thing that's not that well known is that Charlie, Michael's brother, actually went to jail. It's known that he's been arrested before, he's been hospitalized, all that stuff, but people didn't know that he went to jail for not paying child support. He even comes out in the local Charleston news, being interviewed as a clear brush. And, it's treated as a joke and even a prank where they pranked Angry Grandpa that Charlie broke out of jail. Just a fun fact. So what was brought up earlier in this iceberg was AGP at a flea market. The least known thing that they've just recently, and by they I mean Michael and Bridget, have just started talking about is Angry Grandpa's flea market restaurant. And there's a whole story attached to having to clean it. I really recommend you go and watch Michael's videos about that. I don't do the stories justice. But AGP had a semi-successful restaurant at the flea market. He got a few big orders, catering orders, like spaghetti dinners, cheeseburger meals, the whole 9 yards. And people really liked his restaurant, and a lot of people really, really loved it. And eventually, Michael states that Grandpa got robbed, and not physically robbed, but they screwed him out of the owning, part of the restaurant, and it's why he eventually left the restauranting business. But he actually wasn't half bad at it, which, hey man, I wish I could have been a part of that. So, something that's been brought up, and something that Michael has been able to talk about really recently, is Grandpa's near-death experiences. In Grandpa's Corner, Grandpa himself talks about some of the times that he's died on the operating table. Michael's touched on it, and he's touched on it recently considering that, Grandpa had cancer in the liver, cirrhosis in the liver, and he beat cancer, and he thought, hey, Grandpa's going to beat cirrhosis, he'll be fine. Look at all these other times that we thought he was going to die, and he didn't. Some of these near-death experiences were caused by car accidents and botched operations and the likes. I really recommend going to Grandpa's Corner and watching it, as Grandpa really does go into more detail than I can, and it's one of those, wow, I can't believe that actually happened to somebody so interesting. And last but certainly not least, the last story here in this iceberg, and one of the least known ones, is Angry Grandpa's friendship with the serial killer Donald P.V. Gaskins. Angry Grandpa has a whole 3-4 video series on Grandpa's Corner, which I highly recommend you go watch, because I don't actually want to spoil too much of it. But Angry Grandpa talks about how he was friends with Pee Wee Gaskins. If you don't know who Pee Wee Gaskins is, he was the hitchhiker killer back in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s, and he killed a lot of women in South Carolina. And he claims to be the most prolific serial killer in all of America, claiming that he killed over 200 people. Yada yada yada. Not yada yada yada, but you know, that's just what this man was saying. And if you want to know more about Pee Wee Gaskins, I highly recommend looking at videos about Pee Wee Gaskins. Bailey Sarian has a really wonderful video about it. And before you go watch Bailey's video, go watch Grandpa's video. So, thank you for watching this iceberg. This iceberg was, as I said earlier in the video, was created by me. If you think there's something I missed on here, feel free to comment down below. I might end up making a second part to this to add on to it. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Hit like, share, subscribe, all the things that YouTubers ask you to do. And thanks for watching.